I like this neighborhood. It's quiet. To me, it's quaint. It's convenient to a lot of things. The interstate, North Tryon. My neighbors, that's the most important part of it. My neighbors, I know, they've been here over 40 years like myself. And then the newer ones that I've met, the last few years. And it's friendly.
The neighborhood is so large, 4,500 individual single-family homes in the neighborhood.
Listen, this is the ideal spot here. 85, the university, somewhat diverse neighborhood.
Para mí la área está muy bien. Está muy bien. Yo he vivido aquí alrededor de 15 años.
I like having the park across the street. I work out there all the time, and I like the Latino presence here because I speak Spanish and I was a Spanish major, and just in general really love Latino culture and Latino food. So being around it is nice, and our neighbors are really nice. They're Honduran, so we chatted up with them a lot.
I like the people. I think everyone has a different story to tell, and to see those people coming together in a state where, like, I understand that empathy that's shared between them is what I really like the most about the community, between age difference, racial difference.
Still enjoy the idea that this is the largest African American community in Charlotte.
But that's not how the neighborhood began in the late 1950s. It was initially called a neighborhood of convenience with fairy tale street names and predominantly white residents.
Snow White Lane, Cinderella Road, Pondella, Candlestick Lane.
After the World War II, Dad went to work for Southern Railway and moved to Charlotte. And of course my mother came as well, and my grandfather on my mother's side was miserable being 500 miles away from his only child, so they bought the lot next door. And so that house was built in late 1957.
Okay.
So
you were there at the very beginning?
Yes.
And it wasn't until, from my understanding, the early 70s, it was around 71, was, the way I understand it, was around when the first blacks started moving into the neighborhood. My parents moved here in 73.
Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission.
The transition from all white to predominantly black homeowners was something John Wall began to chronicle after he moved in, also in 1973.
We found the home on a cul-de-sac, on a hill, on a corner lot, 3 bedrooms, ranch, bath and a half, just what we were looking for. And that was the location we chose to raise our family.
When I walked in this house, going out in the community looking for somewhere to stay, and when I walked into this house, I knew this was just where I needed to be. The neighborhood was very comfortable. The neighbors were very enlightening.
Linda Butler and her daughter Katrina also called Hidden Valley home since the early 70s. Katrina says she loved growing up here.
Being able to play in the street, being able to play with the neighbors, and growing up and just having a sense of calmness, because we used to still be able to play till the street lights came on and have our door open.
It was kind of different because it was mixed, black and white, and I had white neighbors crossing on the side of me. And it was nice and quiet. We had a lot of children. On my street I lived on.
To a larger house, the reason I moved to Hidden Valley. And it was during the time of white flight.
And then, as more blacks started moving in, more, I say whites, blacks, but more whites started moving out.
You gotta remember it was just maybe 9 years after civil rights was passed.
Oh, it was mixed, even though we had the so-called white flight. But no, it was a mixed neighborhood and still is.
Over time, it became like 99% black. Whites moved out. We had a couple of whites I used to, work with on the PTA. They stayed.
You grew up there
I did.
and stayed until?
Until about a year and a half ago, actually. Yeah, my father passed away in September 2016. Originally, it was pretty much all white and then became a mixed community, which was better for us, actually. We have some really good neighbors, still some really close ties there. You know, we'd visit in each other's homes. Dad would often tell the story of neighborhood block parties in the early beginnings.
One of my most vivid memories is having a street party where the police would come and everybody was glad to see the police, and they blocked off the streets and everybody brought their favorite dish and they had a big street party. And that way, that created camaraderie with the neighbors. The kids got to know the other kids.
This is a good example. This is a basketball team that the Optimist Club. These are some of the step clubs. That this is the involvement of the community. Look at that, the t-shirts. And these are adults working with these young boys.
There's a lot of rich history in the neighborhood. That pretty much sums it up. And I mean, the mayors, this used to be where the who's who of the black community lived.
Several doctors and many lawyers, doctors and lawyers, school teachers, dentists, firemen, police officers, business owners, professional, black and white, once called Hidden Valley their home.
We had policemen live out here.
Yeah. Oh, sure did. On Pondella,
Right
not far from you.
Right by me.
Yeah. And
preach on that street too.
Well, there's a bunch of preachers. Huh?
Yeah.
Previous mayor Harvey Gantt was a neighbor.
We got a very nice house in Hidden Valley.
Harvey Gantt, who was elected Charlotte's first African-American mayor in 1983, moved to Hidden Valley in 1971 and stayed for 9 years.
We never had any negative experiences in the schools. We never saw much crime when we were living there in the 70s. As a matter of fact, I spent a lot of time, even when I was on city council, because I got elected during that period, going to the Sugar Creek Park and playing tennis with a lot of the neighbors. It was just a good old middle-class African-American neighborhood.
At the time, the community was close to shopping. There were Winn-Dixie, there were grocery stores.
Even restaurants, and it was real nice at that time.
There was a swimming pool, neighborhood swimming pool across the street there on Forest and Tom Hunter Road. And during that time, there were a lot of people just walking through the neighborhood, going over to the swimming pool, and it was very decent.
And then, like we said earlier, that the people started moving out, and then it just started kind of getting a different persona. You know, it went from being the who's who to this was the predominantly middle class area, to middle class to, oh, this is where all the hula, you know, the gang people are, to this is a hodgepodge of renters.
When people started renting the houses, the neighborhood did go down, and there were drugs being sold in the neighborhood. It's not what you environment you want to bring your kids up in. And,
it didn't seem like it was all over the neighborhood. The street I lived on stayed pretty quiet most of the time. The problem, like I said, we had like people that wasn't keeping the yards up and everything. But the drugs, it seemed like it was closer to North Trine in that area. But whenever the report is Hidden Valley, so everybody thinks it's all over the whole neighborhood.
Residents say that same perception applied to a gang called the Hidden Valley Kings.
The introduction of the Hidden Valley Kings by the media and the police department created this atmosphere of crime and violence and a place that's an undesirable place to live. And I can tell you, I've never felt threatened in my community. And I think if you talk with other homeowners, they will share the same sentiment.
Let me first start by saying I never felt afraid. I did hear gunshots, but I never felt scared of, well, didn't even know that, didn't even think too much about them existing. I never had any break-ins. I never had anybody, damaging my property or anything like that.
Did you ever see like gang activity in the neighborhood?
Oh yeah. Well, I would say drug activity. Yeah, I've seen cars on Yuma Street drive up. One will drive this way and one will come the other way, and they'll stop, have a conversation, throw something across the car, and take off. It was a drug deal. We witnessed that right out here in front of the house here at Plaza Midwood. So it's all over the place. So yeah, I've seen some of that.
Okay. Were you ever fearful living in the community at that time?
No.
In the late 90s, I would say, when the gang started kind of, being more prominent in Charlotte, some may have left due to fear, but I think that if you really looked at it, more people probably stayed and you realize because the gangs didn't terrorize Hidden Valley, even though they had that bad persona of being, on History Channel and everything else with the Hidden Valley Kings. They didn't terrorize their own neighborhood. That's like, trashing your own yard. They didn't do that. What they did was outside of the neighborhood. Contrary to most people's belief, they actually protected the neighborhood more so than anything to outsiders who were trying to infiltrate, per se, the neighborhood or do bad things. But now, of course, negativity followed them. But ultimately, they knew, it was enough of them, they knew whose car was this. They knew Aunt May's car was the blue Lincoln, the 75 Lincoln. They knew that Johnny drove the truck. I mean, because they were, not necessarily from the neighborhood, but they were here long enough to know who was who. We had a lot of people who were coming from these different places who were not all that good. And so the Hidden Valley Kings must have realized that. I don't know whether they were selling drugs or whatever was going on, but this was like this undercurrent stuff happening in the valley. So they formed to police these other criminals. That's the way I see it from my perspective. Most of the people in the community didn't even know that they existed. Now if you're younger and you were in grade level or elementary or even high school, yeah, you knew they were here and you knew where they hung out. But the older people, they didn't bother them, and they had no clue they even existed. I didn't even really realize it got to the point until after I saw the documentary.
And that thing went national.
The 2009 documentary they're talking about was a part of the History Channel's Gangland series. It's been viewed, shared, and reshared on the History Channel and YouTube.
We had a third roommate who was ready to be locked in. He was coming from out of state to come live here with us. And then a friend of his who had heard about the neighborhood's reputation from the Gangland documentary, I think it came out, 10 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, like 2006.
Like that documentary, he heard about it, and so he told us it was his exact words, something along like a crime-ridden, what was it?
Crime-infested.
Yeah, crime-infested hole. So because of that, he thought it was too bad for him to live here, and so we could not find a roommate for a while because of that.
People tell me, oh, I saw it on YouTube. I saw it in Creative Loafing. And I said, oh, you did? Well, it's news to me. And they thought I was evading the issue. But I really had, like I said, I had no first-hand perception. And now that troubles me that I didn't know. I wonder why I didn't know. And then I said, how much of it is real? And then I see the police say, oh, we've arrested 15 Hidden Valley Kings. Oh, we cleaning this up. I really didn't know there was that much cleaning up to do.
And that's a sentiment shared by residents who still live in Hidden Valley, as well as some who moved away but still had friends and family living here.
It was sensationalized, like there was trouble there in the neighborhood, but it was sensationalized like a movie, like one of those movies that everybody driving along, shooting down at each other down North Tryon Street.
I was in Chapel Hill, and then I moved to Georgia. So I heard about it from friends who saw the Hidden Valley Kings portrayed via the media or the news. You know, the negative perception bothered me, but at the same time, when I would come to the neighborhood, I did not feel threatened or unsafe.
And it's interesting that when that all occurred, I didn't follow it nearly as closely. And I don't know whether that was by design or the fact that my trips to visit friends in that neighborhood, we didn't run into those gangs that they said were there. And I never had the feeling that they took over the neighborhood. Again, I thought it was maybe a little bit overdone. Certainly I'm not denying the existence. I'm not trying to undermine what law enforcement was saying that existed there. But I still tended to know the people who were there, and it's rare that they actually spent a lot of time talking about what was going on. So while I might have been naive, I must say that I did not, even as mayor, my job was to make sure that people felt safe in their communities. And I was assured by the law enforcement people that we were going to get some control of gangs generally in the community, and specifically even in the Hidden Valley area.
In 2007, a Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department task force took the first step to eradicate the Hidden Valley Kings by arresting more than 20 members during a sting operation. But the neighborhood's tarnished reputation has been harder to repair.
Can't seem to forget the past. Okay. And I think this neighborhood has gotten a bad rap in that regard.
When it comes to what message they have for the media, residents had a lot to offer.
They focus on the negative, and sometimes, to me, being a Charlotte native, you watch the news and they'll say a crime occurred in Hidden Valley and it's not even technically Hidden Valley. So to me, it's like a lack of knowledge of really knowing the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is so large. I'm like, I don't know if a lot of the current journalists even know the landscape of the neighborhood, because if it's a crime occurring in an apartment complex near Hidden Valley, that's not technically Hidden Valley to me, being a native. So that skews the perception of someone who's a transplant to Charlotte. Like, I have a lot of friends who are transplants, so you know, what they see on the news is what they believe.
It's always never in Hidden Valley. Meaning that they will label everything Hidden Valley, and it could be Sugar Creek Road, it could be the apartments off of North Tryon. I will immediately look for, where is this location? Because I know that it's not Hidden Valley.
It's kind of like the cover of a book. You see the cover of a book and you can draw some conclusion, but it's probably not the meat of the book.
They need to come out more and see the good things that go on out through here.
That's what the media doesn't show, is the majority of, I would say, like my peer group and my brother's peer group as well. Most of us are college educated professionals, successful careers, law-abiding citizens, you know, raising good families. So, but you don't hear about that.
People was in with their babies in this stroller, was still walking around in the neighborhood like nothing was going on. That's why when they said this, we got so adamant about putting it on, going and getting the news about putting it on there, because we didn't see it.
One of the things that I have done personally is to reach out to every media outlet in Charlotte to get to know a reporter and ask them to come work with us. Have an ongoing relationship with the community where you can find good stories to report on. Individuals who are supporting the culture and the traditions of our neighborhood. Focus on how the families have contributed to this community.
It's better than what it used to be.
You mean the coverage is better than what it used to be?
Yes.
Some local media have done stories about Hidden Valley's reputation improving, as well as highlighting some of the new nearby amenities like the light rail. That brings us to phase 4, the lived experience in Hidden Valley today.
La comunidad donde yo estoy está muy segura, me gusta porque en estos momentos se ve mucho policía ya cuidando, resguardando la área.
So what kind of crime does happen in the neighborhood, if any?
Well, we have our little police report monthly when we have our community meetings. And they say that petty crime is pretty much what's going on now. It's not a whole lot of hard crime. There are from time to time a shooting, because like I say, that's everywhere too. But last time I think they had something about make sure your cars are locked, because a lot of people were complaining about the car break-ins.
This is November 2018.
These reports are shared by CMPD Officer Gallant, who has been patrolling the community since 2012. He confirmed off camera that violent crime is not a regular occurrence in Hidden Valley, a community of 12,000 plus residents.
This is the largest neighborhood between, I would say, UNCC and Uptown Charlotte. So it's actually a target neighborhood for people wanting to buy property here. We get calls every week. We get correspondence every week. I want to buy your house.
Really?
Yes, and of course we just throw it in the trash can.
With being the president of the neighborhood, I'm finding out now that Hidden Valley today is 55% home ownership and 45% rentals.
Home buyers renting out the properties and developers wanting to build apartments are big topics at the community association meetings that transitioned to Zoom during the pandemic.
Being a homeowner out here and sitting back from where I'm sitting and saying that I won't sell, I'm gonna sit here. This is my home, I'm gonna be here. Kind of makes it kind of hard when you see houses that your neighbors had that being bought up by rental companies, and you have no way of getting to them no other than code enforcement.
Hidden Valley is still a desirable place to live for many people who are new to Charlotte because of the size of the lots, the maturity of the trees, and the physical infrastructure. There are sidewalks, there are bike lanes. The infrastructure is in place to support that demographics. Hidden Valley is diverse. There are a number of ethnicities that are homeowners and that call Hidden Valley home. And there's the schools. There are walkable schools in our neighborhood.
Hidden Valley is still a great place to live. We have challenges in the schools, and I think the home development or the role that the home plays, somehow we have to regenerate that passion for taking care of our kids and making sure they get off to a good start in elementary school. So the schools is particularly one of my concerns. We got Hidden Valley Elementary, we got Martin Luther King Middle. And I'd like to see those schools in the top tier as far as student performance.
At the making of this documentary, Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School and Hidden Valley Elementary were receiving D grades.
You know, this is my 21st year in education.
Principal Daniel Gray and Vice Principal Kaz Muhammad joined Hidden Valley Elementary at the start of the 2019-2020 school year to improve academic performance while also meeting the needs of a primarily African American and Latino student base.
We want to set a standard. You know, I kind of compare it, you know, when I'm talking to students at like Harvard University. Doesn't really matter what demographic goes there, whether it's male, female, what race, nationality. You know, when you walk in those doors at Harvard University, there's a standard that you're walking into, and that when you leave out of there, you're going to leave out of there a certain caliber individual. And that's what we want to kind of establish in our children.
That standard is part of a plan to reverse the school's low performance status using a holistic approach.
The big thing that we've tried to push this year, and that has been something within the school itself, and I know the staff truly believes in it, and that's the total care of students, looking at it from not just the academic standpoint, but providing that social emotional support.
It's a holistic institution here, so our children come with different needs, so you have to address those social emotional needs before you can even get to the academics. And so our teachers are programmed that way here.
Teachers and staff like Erica Valles.
I am the interpreter for the school. I've
worked at Hidden Valley since 2011.
During her years at the school, Erica has seen the demographic shift from predominantly African American to 65% Latino students, according to the school. And during this interview, she explains the strain on the community of kids not being in the classroom because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
It has been very difficult for them to adjust at this time because a lot of them have never really had interacted with any type of technology. And so it's difficult for those families to help their children get acclimated with the whole remote system. So we are, as a school, trying to make it easier for them.
Yeah, it hurts to not see the kids, but on the flip side, it's been an amazing, amazing response. And I've gotten to really see a different side of my staff through this situation and seeing that, you know, despite we all have areas that we need to grow in, one area that nobody on the staff has to grow in is their love for children.
That love for children manifesting even more during the making of this documentary. With Hidden Valley Elementary School, residents, students at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and other volunteers collaborating on a tutoring program to help address the digital divide during the pandemic.
I have to say in our tutoring program, it's a little...
This is one of the many reasons why I love my community, Charlotte, North Carolina's Hidden Valley, and I'm not alone.
If you really start digging in and learning about the community, it's not what the outside thinks it is. And you know, I'm from the outside, but I've taken the chance to dig in and learn about it and understand the community, and I've embraced the community as much as they've embraced me.
Well, I actually been in this location from 17 years. My dad run this business since I was small. It feels real good, you know, staying in Hidden Valley. You know, we have up and downs on business, but we thank God that our business increased, started going up, and that's how it feels for me staying in Hidden Valley. We have a little bit of everybody.
It's just a neighborhood, you know, that cares about each other. Not any different than any other neighborhood in Charlotte or anywhere else. It's just a neighborhood with such rich history, but also such awful stereotypes that don't match the actual narrative that we see on the daily basis.
Is there anything that you would like the general public to know about Hidden Valley?
Easily, yes. Report the good things that are happening there. I'll bet the Hidden Valley Optimist Club can tell you about great individual stories, episodes, where people have had the courage to do good things, where they see development of young people, where they've worked in the schools to try to make them better. What we don't do is report enough of the small events that when compiled together can start to change the perception of a neighborhood.
The community is so willing to come together and make it a better place for the young generation. And I see it. I see it when they come in and they volunteer their time. I'm also the volunteer coordinator at the school. And it's, you know, just people within the community wanting to give back.
And a community wanting the world to know what it's really like in Hidden Valley.
A family-orientated neighborhood, lots of people, lots of family, lots of diversity. Well, at least now, a lot more diversity now than it was, say, 30 years ago.
And even if it's like, when you think of diversity as age, it makes me smile when my 40-some-year-old neighbor's like, Marge, you can come over too now. We're going to be sitting around outside, but please feel free. We want you to come,
Me gusta que están las tiendas muy cercanas, los restaurantes también. Tenemos lo que es un parque aquí en frente de donde yo vivo.
It's home, and we love where we are. We love our house, and our neighborhood dynamics are changing a little bit, but we're getting to know even new neighbors who are moving in. So
it's very quiet around here usually. You don't have a whole lot of parties going on like you would living on University perhaps, or anything like that. So for me, it's very kind of quaint, almost is the word I would use for this specific area that we're living in.
Just it feels like home, I guess. I mean, I was able to come back and, still feels like home. I know a lot of things have changed, but it still feels like home.
Home and a neighborhood of homes whose narrative we really want to change. Now, we started this documentary in December of 2018 when I was a PhD student at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and a geography researcher with the Charlotte Action Research Project, which we call CHARP. Now, the idea stemmed from my career in broadcast news, where I really started to understand the impact on urban geographies that we were having based on how we told stories. And it came from the community really wanting to undo some of the damage that you saw in that national story that was highlighted in this documentary. Now, since we had our first viewing of the documentary, we've had a couple of discussions between community members and even some outsiders, and the topics that are coming up are bridging the divide between homeowners and renters, between the main demographics of African Americans and Latinos, and even a concerted effort to push back against affordable housing being put in this community. The beauty of all that, although some of those discussions have gotten a little bit passionate, the beauty of that is understanding that now we're talking about issues that really impact any other community. So hopefully that narrative shift is really happening, less focus on the past and more focus on this being a community like any other, with residents who love being here and want the best for their neighborhood. So our request is that you share this documentary with as many people as possible so that they understand what it's really like to live and to work and attend school in Hidden Valley. Thank you for watching.